In September 1666, a fire ripped through the City of London. It lasted 4 days, it destroyed 87 churches, 13,000 homes, and most of the original medieval city. Over 70,000 people became homeless. The fire started in a bakery and it spread fast. Most of the damage was in the City of London, what is now the commercial and financial heart. Whether it was set deliberately or conveniently used, it resulted in a reset of the entire legal and physical structure of the city, and it allowed Parliament to pass new property laws. The fire conveniently burned all the records, which wiped out debt and ownership records. Conveniently, it gave the elites a blank page to redesign London in their image. And within weeks, new plans were drawn up. The city would have wider streets and stronger building rules, and it was redesigned to suit banking. It conveniently forced clearing of areas that had previously rejected or resisted commercial development. And in the middle of all of this chaos, a law was passed that is rarely mentioned. The Cestui Act of 1666 allowed property to be seized if the owner had disappeared and no proof of life was shown in time. During the fire, thousands fled the city, but with no way to prove their survival, as in, you standing here is not enough, we need some paperwork. Then their land was taken. The fire was a trigger. Afterwards, the Crown and the city livery companies tightened their control. New London was built for the landowners, the moneylenders, the merchant class. In 1940, London was hit again. This time, German bombers targeted the East End and the city. They hit the ports, the docks, and the working class homes all around them. By the time the war ended, most of the city's population were left homeless, while the wealthy areas in the west never got touched. And then suddenly, in 1947, the Town and Country Planning Act is passed. It removed the right of people who owned a plot of land to develop that land without the state's permission. Development rights were now held by the state. But the outcome here was not socialism. This wasn't real public ownership. It was a way of centralizing control of who could develop land. And consistently, Britain's bureaucratic channels favour those who already have capital. So the bombed lands become clearance zones. Whole neighbourhoods in Bermondsey and Elephant and Castle were flattened and handed to developers. And these planners redrew London's maps, deliberately scattering communities, putting them into blocks and estates that were built without their consent and managed centrally and would benefit those who stood to profit long term. The communities that were bombed never got rebuilt. They got scattered and siloed into pockets across central London. In 1944, while the war was still on, moneylenders met in New Hampshire at a place called Bretton Woods. The war wasn't even over when these moneylenders met, but they were already planning for the post-world order, their new world order. And out of that meeting came the institutions that would shape our global economy for the next 80 years. For the worse, they've destroyed the habitability of the planet. From that meeting in New Hampshire, we got the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and a vision for a global central currency. These 4 pillars were the foundation of the United Nations monetary and financial system. This was never neutral. It embedded power into finance, not politics where we think it is. It placed currency and sovereignty of all of the countries in the world into the hands of unelected institutions with United States structural dominance. What these unelected sneaky bankers built in 1944 is the debt slave machinery. What the IMF has called development for decades is raw economic violence, usury, and slavery. The IMF does not manage currencies, it manages compliance. Countries are put into crisis deliberately so that the IMF can offer them predatory loans only if they surrender their sovereignty to the US bond market. This forces countries into privatized, precarious, dangerous structures that incentivize owners of businesses to cut wages aggressively and grow for infinity on a finite planet. The IMF is guilty of removing price controls, slashing public spending, enforcing unnecessary austerity just to increase their interest payments, and opening vulnerable people in underdeveloped countries up to predatory capitalism via foreign direct investment. Call it what you want, structural adjustment. The results in these three examples are the same. The results for countries who get trapped in IMF systems are the same. Children die, populations starve, and creditors get rich. That's the model. That's the system. It does not matter what any one individual thinks they're doing inside of the system. This is the system that was built to extract. They figured it out in 1666 that they could use a disaster to consolidate their power, and they've been doing it again and again and again ever since. A country collapses, the IMF steps in. Their conditions are imposed, the country's assets get stripped, and predators are drawn in to pick the carcass of what's left. Law is a weapon. Their goal is to extract resources. The playbook from the fire and the Blitz has now gone global. Crisis is not the outcome of our broken system. Crisis is the system. It is the tool of control, is to keep you in perpetual loops of crisis and violence and fear. Whether that's post-war London, 1980s Latin America, or 21st century Greece, the model is the same. The empire never died. It just thinks if it wears a nice suit, it can hide.